G'day, welcome back. I hope you haven't thought that these videos that I'm putting together are just a rant and stuff like that, but I hope you're getting something out of them. I think sometimes people should do these for themselves. I'm sure they'll get some stuff out of it as well. Um, what I'm going to talk about today is this myth around reaching out and how easy it should be. I think the whole idea around this "Are You Okay" day is fantastic. But I think the idea around it that everybody can just sort of have a cup of coffee and then suddenly the conversation starts is probably making it a little bit too simple. Um, there are times when I want to try and have those sort of conversations with people, and I think it is extremely hard to do. And I think it's hard from both parties. For those people that are suffering from mental health, I think sometimes wanting to sort of talk about is probably high on the list of some people's wants and needs. And it also depends on what part of the journey you're on at that point in time, because sometimes if you're just in there and you don't understand, you sort of think, oh, well, I'll get through this, so I don't need anybody help, should be. And then once you're in it for quite some time, you change your thoughts patterns and you're sort of thinking about, well, why is it still happening to me, and why haven't I reached out earlier, or why haven't I done something about this, or why can't I fix this myself? You start to having lots of other sort of thoughts about it, and so that stops you at that point in time. So sometimes I think there is, for some people, there's only a sort of a small window when they themselves might reach out to somebody else for some help. And if they've got nobody to listen at that point in time, at that particular point in time, then that moment may be passed by, which is such a shame, because that might be the only time that person reaches out. And if we're just not listening as friends of that person, then that may be the only opportunity that we had to be able to sort of have a conversation and make that person feel good. But conversely, on the other side, if you are seeing somebody that's struggling and stuff, you're having those same sort of thoughts as well about reaching out. You're sort of thinking, oh, I should, are you okay? It's three simple words, or four simple letters if you want to go with the acronym to say, but they aren't easy to say sometimes, because sometimes it could be something that's just happening on that day. Sometimes it could be a longer thing. Sometimes there is something that's actually driving, and then it's easy. Sometimes that somebody's going through something particular, and it's then much easier to talk about. I know when I was losing, when I was dealing with the death of my father, that was a lot easier for people to reach out to me to sort of say, "You're doing all right. I've had a similar experience. I know what you're going through," and so on and so forth. And that was a lot easier, and I did feel the sympathy and the needs of and the wants of people at that point in time to make sure that I am actually doing okay and that I'm not thinking anything silly. But when I was in my sort of my years of depression, I think it was a lot easier. It was a lot more difficult for people to realize that there was something going on. And sometimes it was only through repeated incidents that people sort of realize that something weird is happening here, and so on and so forth. And then they might say something. And if I wasn't receptive at that point in time, then I was in the fine brigade. We all know the fine brigade. How you doing? Yeah, I'm fine. What's going on? Oh, it's all fine. Don't worry, it's fine. The fine brigade is one of our truly magnificent things that we can hide behind, because we're always fine. And I was certainly one of those. And I think for some people, when they're being, if you're reaching out to them, if you get that sort of block of fine or good, and there's another one, or okay. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. If you get those sort of blocks, then suddenly there's nowhere else to go. So it's very difficult to then continue on. And so then you sort of fall down and fall back into the idea of just making sure that you're not making it uncomfortable, because you don't want to sort of say more than what you need to, in that sort of sense as well. So from that sort of point of view, sometimes it's very difficult to continue on. Are you okay is the first sentence. But then if they sort of say fine and stuff, it can be very difficult to keep on going and keep on sort of saying, are you really? Because then when does it start to be sort of uncomfortable? When are you starting to pry? When are you starting to go past that point of being a good friend? All of those things, those social norms start coming into the idea, and suddenly we're actually might be doing more harm than good. And sometimes I think it's when we're sitting there, sometimes it's also difficult to sort of judge those things. We're always got things on our own mind. We may not be doing okay as well, and we're just trying to sort of make sure that somebody else is maybe speaking up because we can see they're in a worse state than we are. Um, so sometimes it is even a struggle for us to sort of reach out. So I sort of think this idea of just sort of reaching out and saying something is quite difficult. I think everybody needs to just sort of acknowledge that it is quite difficult because there's a lot of things that impact that and whether you're actually going to make a sentence. And I think that's why sometimes it's also very hard to keep going. If you've gone up to somebody and said, "Are you okay?" and they're like, "Fine," and then try it again, fine, and try it again, fine. At some stage, you're also going to stop. But I think what is probably best for the other person is to keep on going because at some stage they are going to break down and they're not going to be fine and it'll be there for everybody to see. And if you can sort of step in around that time, they know from your previous questioning that you are actually genuinely concerned about them and they will then start to open up. I know it's very difficult and I know it's hard and you don't want to pry and you don't want to be the person that keeps on asking and asking and asking. But sometimes that's what somebody needs to sort of realize that that person is not going to stop and they are genuinely um, concerned and they genuinely want to help in some shape or form. Sometimes they just don't know how. And are you okay may be the only way that they know how to start. So sometimes it's up to both of you to continue on that conversation in some shape or form. Sometimes it is about distraction first of all. Are you okay? And then talk about something that everybody is interested in. The footy or something else that went over, or a joke that's going around the office, or whatever it happens to be. And then when the ice is broken, you can come back to the serious topic of are you okay? Because then maybe it's not so hard to sort of say it, or maybe that you've shared a joke or you've talked about something mundane might allow that person either side to open up. I think the consistency is the thing. You need to be able to sort of go back to that person often enough. I know when I was in the Fine Brigade, it was very much about, putting up a brave face and, I'll soldier through. I probably didn't realise how many people I was hurting at the same time. People who were genuinely interested in my well-being, genuinely concerned about how I was going, and I was in the Fine Brigade, constantly telling them, I'm fine, but obviously to them, I was falling apart around them, or in front of them, depending on how it was, and making sort of showing that not I was not even aware that I was showing that sort of vulnerability. Everybody sort of feels like they've got their game face on and it's all good. But I think from my point of view, I must have been slowly disintegrating in front of their eyes. Um, so I was lucky I had people that continued to persist, and some people, even the really good friend that I had, who would really pull me aside and sort of say, instead of saying, "Are you okay?" he'd tell it to me straight and say, "What the fuck is wrong with you at the moment?" And because I knew where he was coming from, it was I knew what he was trying to say, and he knew that I was going wrong at some stage. So I suppose that's a long-winded way of sort of saying, "Are you okay?" is a great start, but just make sure that you persist. And when you hear, and if you're on that side where you're the one that people are asking, make sure that you maybe sort of say, don't go into the Fine Brigade, but maybe sort of say, at the moment, I'm okay, but maybe ask me again in a little while and see if I'm still doing okay. And if somebody else comes back to you again and asks, are you okay? Then obviously something's not okay that they can see, because there's some piece of information, some behavior that they're seeing that is actually showcasing to them that you're not okay. So maybe when people ask, "Are you okay?" there is probably genuine concern behind that, and they do want to help as much as they possibly can. So sometimes allow yourself to be vulnerable and sort of maybe say, "I'm going to leave the fine brigade," and say, "No, I'm not doing well at all." Okay, another good chat. Hopefully you're doing well, and look after yourselves.